All right, today's vlog is going to be about balance. It's basically an ability to maintain your desired body position by subconscious reactions or corrections. This is an aspect of training that I notice is often neglected. I really don't ever see anyone programming it into their workout specifically. I got a few people in here too. But it does make a big difference. When I was younger, I thought I was pretty athletic, and then I started getting into something called parkour, and then I realized I wasn't nearly as athletic as I was, but the biggest gap between where I was at and where I needed to be in terms of being able to do some of these movements in parkour discipline was balance training. Once I started adding balance training into the mix, everything started coming a lot better. It can be a weak point in a lot of different movements that they use in CrossFit, including pistols, trying to maintain balance on one leg while you're doing some squatting. So it's like you're thinking so much about the strength and the mobility aspects that you don't realize that if you don't have enough balance to stand on that one foot while you're doing that, then you're never going to be able to do it. So it's like you need to train it through pistols. It's very important for your Olympic lifts and every Olympic lift variation because you're throwing around weight. Maybe it doesn't go exactly where you expect it's going to go. Say you're doing like an overhead and bar goes a little too far forward, but you can still save it. If you have very good dynamic balance, you can get underneath it and save it. You can chase it down. That's what they call that. Also important for just sticking, your cleans, catching it low. Balance is very important in all that stuff. And it can really inhibit your progress on things like squats and deadlifts too, if your balance is like really bad. Some people, when they're locking out their deadlifts, will actually lose their balance and fall off their footing or something like that. So if like your balance is bad enough, it'll start being a limiting factor on things that it shouldn't really even be a limiting factor in. So it's really important to train your balance, if anything, just to make sure that it is not limiting your development on any of these movements. It's also very important for general athleticism. So like if you're playing any kind of field sport, your ability to like cut, your agility, your ability to juke is going to be really limited by your balance. You might think of it as just an agility thing or just a speed thing, but it plays into balance as well. And also balance is a huge prerequisite for just a number of high skill movements in any sport, shooting a basketball or getting a rebound or swinging a baseball bat or kicking a soccer ball or something. All of these things require dynamic balance, the ability to kind of maintain the correct body position while you're doing something, while something's happening to you. It's also very important for injury prevention. So, a big part of injury prevention, say you're kind of like running through a field and there's a hole you don't see or something like that, and you step in the hole. Well, if you've been doing good balance training, you've kind of tuned your nervous system up to be able to react in a way that's going to save you. So it's like the ground's not there all of a sudden, but your body's going to naturally do what it has to do to like catch you the right way so that you don't tear something. If your balance is bad, well, you're going to end up tearing an ACL, something like that. And you can think of all sorts of other situations where having a lack of balance can lead to injury. I mean, just standing on your feet is important, If you're falling, you might hurt yourself. If you're not falling, then you're probably much less likely to hurt yourself. You're avoiding contact injuries in addition to non-contact injuries. So getting into the actual meat of it, there's two major divisions here. So static balance. Static balance is what we were talking about for like those lifts. We were kind of trying to maintain proper body position. Maybe something's happening to you like while you're doing what you're doing, and you just need to make sure that you're locked in enough so that it's not throwing you off your feet. And then there's dynamic balance. That's when you are moving but still having to keep balance while you're doing it. So that'd be like figure skating or like skateboarding or like coming to a complete stop on a small object or something. Probably the best way to train dynamic balance is actually through all of those different movements by doing the discipline itself. But a good way to kind of find a general exercise that's going to improve your performance on all of those things is using something called precisions or precision training, which I'll show you in a second. For static balance, again, that's kind of maintaining body position regardless of what's happening to you. You're going to improve that through what's called perturbation training. So it's basically like trying to do what you want to do, but introducing some sort of some sort of stimulus that's going to try to like knock you off your guard, and it can't be predictable really. Like whereas the precision thing, that's kind of in your control, and things should be predictable. It's just difficult because of whatever it is you're doing. Static balance, what it is you're doing should be, well practiced, but the things that are happening to you while you're doing it should be unpredictable. So like probably the most basic form of perturbation training would be like just thinking of something that you do all the time anyways and making it harder by introducing a balance aspect to it. Like one thing I actually do whenever I brush my teeth is I stand on one foot. And I just brush my teeth while standing on one foot. That's a huge, it may seem real small and it may not seem that difficult, but by the time you can brush your teeth while standing on your foot without having to put that other foot down, you've already improved your balance like a great degree. And if you've never done that before, go ahead and give it a shot. It's actually more difficult than it sounds. But you can do that with all sorts of stuff. Say you're just like cooking. You can just cook and stand on one foot, or do this or that and stand on one foot, because that's what perturbation training is. Like you're trying to stand on one foot, but what's throwing you off your guard is the fact that you need to be moving your hand around while you brush your teeth, and you need to be doing all this other stuff. So that motion from up here is throwing off your ability to stand on that one foot. See what I'm saying? So a few other ways you can work on perturbation training in the gym. You'll see people in the back sometimes, pressing a piece of PVC with some bands on either side, strapped on to some like weights, and it's going to shake you all around, but you're just trying to like maintain your tension through it, even though it's pulling you around and stuff. That's kind of a mix of stability and balance training, but it is also a form of perturbation training. Something else you'll see is somebody who is trying to get better at carrying a yoke. Instead of having solid bars attached to the weights, they'll have a cross beam with chains attached to weights, and that way it amplifies every little misstep you make. So if you swing a little too far this way, those chains are going to try to pull you off your feet. So you keeping tight and reacting to that force, again, that's kind of mixing stability and balance training. So because you're kind of mixing those two things, I'm not going to include it in this video. I'll make another video about it. But they're all forms of perturbation training. Some other simpler forms of perturbation training that use some of the gear that we have here. This is kind of a mix of dynamic and static balance, but the simplest thing you can do on this wobble board is just full circles. So like a lot of people see this and they think the goal is to like actually balance on it, and while that's a pretty good exercise and you can like kind of work up to the point where you're doing squats on this thing without letting the edges touch, what this is really good for is kind of building up the muscles in your lower legs that you're going to need to be able to make these minor corrections on some of the other stuff that I'm going to show you. So the most basic exercise is with both feet. You're just doing full circles, trying to make a nice smooth motion. So you might go like 30 seconds one direction and then 30 seconds the other direction. And no more than like a few sets of 30 seconds, every day or so. Another good thing about balance training is as long as it's not too intense, like some of the other stuff I'm going to show you, you can do it every day. And it's like, I have a problem taking rest days. I know a lot of people who are really into working out, the harder thing to do is rest, and you need rest. So this is something that you can do on your rest day and feel like you're actually getting something done, but still give your body kind of like the rest it needs to recover from the harder work that you've done. Step up from that is to kind of step on the center. And if you need to, you can kind of spot yourself with your other toe, but you're doing the same thing. You're just trying to make these circles as smooth as you can. 30 seconds one direction, 30 seconds the other direction. Hitting both legs, trying to rely as little as possible on that foot that you're spotting yourself with. And over time, so this is on the easiest setting here, you can actually raise this up by screwing this piece on the bottom, and it makes it more difficult because you're hitting a larger range of motion. So again, this is a good way of kind of building up all those fine muscles you need to be able to do some of these other more advanced balance drills. Also, if you're finding that you're losing balance in your pistols, this is probably the best way to get better at improving your pistols, as long as you have the required mobility and strength. Okay. Over here, this is a bongo board. This one can be kind of dangerous if you're not used to it. So I would make sure you practice some other stuff before you step up to this. But it's kind of another form of static balance. You would probably want to start out putting your hand on something while you're doing this, but you can get to a point where you can do it without relying on something. And this board in particular is kind of designed so that you can do like kick flips on and stuff like that if you're into skateboarding. I am not that advanced, and that would be a form of dynamic balance we were talking about before. But what you can do is get to a point where you're just standing on it, okay? Which is a good way of feeling out any left-right imbalances you have. And then you can start to work into some like low squats, holding bottom positions. That's going to carry over really well to your receiving positions and like your snatches and your cleans. And just over time, you can start to add some swings into it, or you can like even have one of those bars a PVC with some stuff dangling from the ends, kind of throwing you off your guard. And you just think of ways to make it more difficult. Or, you know, you probably wouldn't want to do this in your bathroom, but brush your teeth while standing on this thing. You know, that's another little challenge you can do. Again, another form of perturbation training, because this thing's trying to move away from you, and you're just constantly making these subconscious corrections to keep yourself on top of it. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing, but when you practice enough, you just kind of focus on wanting to stay on the board, you develop that natural ability to make those corrective movements, keep you on the thing, okay? Another form of perturbation training, using this pad for now, but if you have like a Bosu ball or some other unsteady surface to stand on, you wouldn't want to use a weight too heavy while you're doing this kind of stuff, because you generally don't want to mix strength training with balance training. But you can do like power snatches, or like light power snatches, or like light power cleans or full snatches while standing on a somewhat unsteady surface. And it doesn't even have to be that much more unsteady than flat ground. Really, for me, just wearing these shoes with a really squishy sole is kind of like doing balance training whenever I'm doing any heavy lifting. So I'll have days where I'll do that on purpose if I'm trying to work on my ability to kind of stay underneath the weight. Then by the time I put my lifters on, you know, it's a nice firm bottom, it's gonna lock you in a lot better. It feels a lot more controlled because you're doing that mild perturbation training. So, you know, you grab a barbell and just do power snatches. This thing's kind of squishy, so I gotta make sure I'm pushing evenly through both legs. Down here, get a power snatch, you know, doesn't feel quite as good as it would on flat ground, but that's the point, is just trying to find a way, making things a little bit less steady than they would be. You could work up from this to something like a Bosu ball, which is gonna be a lot harder, but again, you wanna keep the weight light, and just kind of work on doing proper technique while standing on that somewhat unsteady surface. So, talking about precision training, I have this bar that I made, but you can use a curb outside, you can use a rail that you find anywhere, you can use any like small thing to land on. I mean, it could just be a plyo box, and for some people, landing on a small plyo box is going to be like a precision, because, you know, say like you can land on something but you don't know how to control your momentum enough to keep you on it. Like actually coming to a complete stop on something from speed takes a good amount of practice and skill. But this is an example of dynamic balance again. For something like this, you could start with some statics balance work just by kind of figuring out what you have to do to stand on this thing, or maybe even squat on it, and just kind of get your joints used to all the different angles that you're going to have to be able to hit while you're standing on this thing. You can start walking on it, just like a regular balance beam, you know, just one side to the other. You can do some turns, but ultimately you're trying to work up to being able to do actual precisions, and that's where you're jumping onto it and catching your balance. So you would start kind of close, just doing a little hop, and you always want to have a soft landing. So if like you're too rigid, you'll just kind of like bounce off of it. Your momentum is going to carry you too far. But you know, over time, you increase the distance, how far away that you're jumping onto the thing. You get a little bit farther as you get more comfortable. You know, learning how you have to react to that greater and greater force. Okay. And then over time, it's going to become more natural to be able to do it without even thinking about it. I mean, I know a lot of people, they look at this rail and they're like petrified of even jumping this high onto it. But it takes baby steps. You might even want to start with it on the ground. Then you can put it here. And then you can actually put it up to any level you want. Or maybe you can keep it here and you start on a box. There's a little bit more downward force going into it. I mean, you can set this up any way you want. And you can actually include it in what's called a plyometric complex. So say you have like 3 jumps you have to do, and then you have to land a precision on the last jump. That kind of takes your focus off of that last jump enough, because you're worried about everything on the way there, to the point where you're not going to like lock up and let fear shut you down. Okay. Again, that's precision training. It's a good form of dynamic balance training. And just wanted to give you all some ideas on how to use, you know, some of this balance equipment that we have here. I very rarely see anybody else using it but myself. But it's here, it's for everyone. So I hope I inspired you to put it to use. Thanks.